Welcome, welcome. I'm Christy. Thanks for joining me on my channel where we are following along with my natural wellness journey. I have been focusing a lot on my physical health in recent weeks, and I'm excited to announce that I will be starting our mental health Mondays to really focus on that other aspect of the whole wellness journey. Both parts are important. All parts are important. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, all of that. And so I'll be excited to offer videos on Mondays talking about mental health, essential oils, things you can do for your mental health, as well as my weekly weigh-ins on Wednesdays or Thursdays. And so I really wanted to start off with some foundational information. I think that's really empowering. Knowledge is power. And then you can take that power, that knowledge, to then inform your actions and to make habits, change behavior. So I feel like it makes a really good foundation. And when we understand some of these things, it's not, okay, I'm not crazy. This is really what's happening in my brain. This is really what's going on, and this is what I can do about it. So this first video, I want to share a little bit about your brain structures, your brain chemicals, how it works, so that you can kind of get an inside look about what's going on in your brain. So I've got some things to share with you. Definitely exciting. Let's take. All right. So mental health and essential oils, a brief overview of our limbic system in the brain, brain chemistry, and then how the power of essential oils can support mental health. So it is kind of all in your mind. Everything that we do, all of our actions, all of our senses, all of our words, all of our everything kind of originates in the brain, kind of has its root there. And so you can see here in the back, this purple part, movement coordination, that's your cerebellum. Right below that is your pons, your brain stem right there, has a lot of your core functions, breathing, heart rate, like your survival part of the brain. And then this part here up front, light blue, attention, planning, decision making, that's what we call our frontal cortex. And that's really, it doesn't finish developing until your mid-20s. And that's really your rational adult, good decision-making brain. But the part we're really going to be talking about that I'd like to focus on is what we call our limbic system, which is kind of right here in the middle, where you can see memory processing, emotion, smell kind of overlaps. And you know, how many of you have heard, got a little too excited. How many of you guys have heard that, you know, smell has such an powerful effect on memory? And that's why they're overlapping in the brain. So let's dive in a little bit to that limbic system. It has a couple different functions that we really focus on in the limbic system. It controls our cingulate gyrus, controls automatic, oh man, let me try this again. Controls autonomic motor function, regulating emotions, behavior, pain center. Your thalamus, that's one place in the brain where hormone production happens, some thyroid production happens there, regulation. Your hypothalamus helps with homeostasis and controlling that stress response in your brain. It's always trying to bring things back into balance. Basal ganglia has to do with behavioral and emotional behavior, rewards, enforcement. The two parts that we're really going to focus on right today are the hippocampus, which is your memory center of the brain, but also learning, emotions, neurogenesis. Neurogenesis meaning the creation of neurons. Neurons, part of your nervous system, sending nerve signals throughout your body, but also neurons also create neurotransmitters. They're endogenous chemicals or components of the brain that help send those signals, whether that's a chemical signal, an emotional signal, kind of that's all working together. And then our amygdala. Amygdala is one of my favorite parts to talk about in the brain. It is like the fire alarm, right? So its main function is an emotional response, happy, fear, anger, anxiety. Really, that is where your fight or flight response starts and originates. And so it can trigger that automatic fear response that you have in your body. It's actually really interesting. They've done studies, and those people who've had repeated traumatic events, particularly in childhood when that brain is developing, they have an enlarged amygdala and a reduced hippocampus, a lot smaller. And so, like I said, the amygdala is that fire alarm trying to say, hey, something's wrong, I need help, you got to protect yourself. And when you're in that state, fight or flight, survival, the brain is pulling all the blood flow from other parts that it doesn't think is necessary. Okay, I'm just trying to survive. I don't have time to remember my multiplication facts or to, make a really complex decision. I'm just trying to stay alive. But on the other hand, your limbic system has some really great functions for your body. Really allows you to find joy and connection and lots of other amazing emotions if we're able to help our body regulate stress response, fear responses, things like that. So here's some cognitive disorders that are connected to the limbic system. And some of this, like I said, it could be a physical malformation in the brain, a system that's not quite right, something that's not formed correctly in the brain. That's less common than the brain chemicals being an imbalance in the neurotransmitters or brain chemicals, hormones, things like that. But things that we're talking about that are connected to the limbic system include depression, anxiety, problems with smelling, so olfactory senses, obsessive compulsive, PTSD, schizophrenia, bipolar, autism spectrum. And then we even move into some of our more commonly thought of ones that are more, I guess, a physical disease, Alzheimer's, movement disorders such as Huntington's and Parkinson's. Parkinson's and specifically, I know, has a lot to do with reduced dopamine levels in the brain and how that affects movement and your control of movement. And so I'm not just talking about, I want to have a good day or I'm feeling a little bit down. I'm talking about mental health disorders in the brain that are connected with the limbic system. And yes, I do believe that there are tools and resources you have that can help restore balance in the brain. And that's hopefully the point that we're going to get to. So when I talk about those brain chemicals, so we've got some neurotransmitters. Again, they're created by neurons and to help facilitate signals in the body. But then there are also some that act as those neurotransmitters, but also kind of a hormone. Dopamine is a good example of this. It is also produced in the adrenal cortex, in your adrenals. And so it's a hormone as well, just like cortisol is the stress hormone. But then we've also got serotonin, oxytocin, glutamate, GABA that are neurotransmitters produced in the brain. The noradrenaline, endorphins are also neurohormones. They're kind of an interesting kind of both, just like dopamine, and those are also created in the adrenals. And so when we're talking about, your brain chemistry, there's an imbalance. What's the imbalance? We're talking about balance of chemicals. There should be, for every action, there is a reaction. For every response, your body is saying, okay, here's the corresponding, you're stressed. Let me give you some cortisol, and this will cause a certain reaction physically in your body. If you're being chased by a bear, your adrenaline says, okay, I don't have time to digest food. I'm going to pull things away from my stomach. I'm going to send blood flow to my main muscle groups, my legs, so that I can run fast, my lungs, so I can breathe. So they are sending signals that are adaptive to try and help you and to protect you. But what happens when that response becomes maladaptive? It's no longer serving a purpose to help you. What if that bear comes home with you at night? In an abusive situation, in a dangerous emotional situation. That's when we have to say, okay, I need to be able to turn off that fight or flight. I need to help my brain learn how to find balance when it has been so dysregulated for so long because of circumstances, chronic stress, toxic stress, adverse childhood experiences, things like that. So yes, we can have physical events that can cause imbalance in the brain, emotional events, birth defects. There are some other physiological things that can cause this imbalance that we talk about sometimes. And your brain is really smart. In fact, your body is really smart. And given all the right tools, it will really thrive, but it also wants to protect itself. There in that very core is saying, I want to survive. I want to be here. And so the brain does everything it can to protect itself from outside threats, because the brain has so much control over the rest of the body, right? So it has something called the blood-brain barrier, which is a protective mechanism around the brain. Kind of like I've talked about in other videos about the cell. The cell has a cell membrane that kind of protects the cell, only lets certain things in and out. Same thing with the blood-brain barrier. It allows gases such as oxygen, water, and then lipid-soluble substances to cross through the brain. Lipid is another word for fat or for oil. And so it forms a membrane that'll only let certain things cross through it in an effort to protect itself from toxins or other harmful substances that might come in through the body. So we talk about a lipid-soluble substance. That is a great scientific way to say essential oil, or at least essential oil is one form of a lipid-soluble substance. So they are molecularly dense, concentrated, hydrophobic, hydrophobic meaning afraid of water, loving oil, loving fat, liquids that are chemical compounds from plants. And the aromatic compounds of essential oils interact with your olfactory nerve, your nose, well, the nerve specifically, that follows the neural pathway that will access the amygdala. Again, remember that first picture about how smell kind of overlaps into the memory processing. That's why we talk about smell accessing memories. So it accesses the amygdala really deep inside the brain, that alarm, to elicit a chemical response. I apologize, my little graphic here says, essential oil stimulus, limbic interpretation, and jumps all the way to emotion. I apologize, I meant to fix that. It should be the chemical response happens in the brain. We're talking about neurotransmitters and hormones, and that is going to elicit an emotional response and then a physical response. I have it written correctly. The graphic doesn't match just yet. But it's a really powerful how smell can access the amygdala, kind of reset that fight or flight, that stress response in your brain, and allow you to come back to a baseline or a place where that frontal cortex turns back on, like, okay, now I can think about this, now I can process this, using all those different parts and abilities that your brain has. So just a little bit of a pathway if you're thinking about, like, wait, does smell really do anything? What are you talking about? I don't know if you've ever been at the dentist, and the dentist doesn't normally give you a pill or things to swallow. No, they normally pull out a mask with some laughing gas in it, right? And that's because of this exact same pathway that I'm talking about. Olfactory receptors in your nose and your mouth even connect to your olfactory nerve. And those are neurons sending messages back and forth to your brain. Olfactory bulb goes into the olfactory cortex in the brain, and that connects into your amygdala, into your limbic system. And they have that process of processing the olfactory sensations, those signals sent by smell. But then it's also important for forming memories, accessing memories, and it can have a calming or a stimulating effect. So I'm just trying to illustrate that there is this physiological pathway between your nose and the brain. Got a little too excited. Okay. There we go. Okay, so when we say it triggers an emotional response, emotions are just information carrying molecules, and they first bind to and react to cell receptors. They get into cells. Again, just like the brain has that membrane, the blood-brain barrier, cells have that membrane to protect itself. But because oils are a lipid-based substance, and so is that membrane, they're able to cross over and communicate on the outside and the inside of a cell. And they're able to impact cellular function and behavior. So for example, I put on an oil, or I smell an oil, it accesses my amygdala saying, hey, it's okay, calm down. We're okay, we're not in danger. You know, some dangers are real and some are perceived. An emotional trigger, we talk about triggers, right? It says, hey, does that trigger, do you really need to have this response? No, let's calm back down. And so your amygdala says, okay, let me send out my serotonin, I'm really okay. That emotion is a molecule, goes and binds to your cell and says, oh, take a deep breath. You could open up those lungs again, take a deep breath. And with that deep breath, you're causing other behavior, physical. Okay, my shoulders are relaxing. The tightness in my hands and in my head is calming down, is going away, relaxing. So I'm just wanting to set the stage. This is a very good foundation for what I'm going to continue to talk about. The connection between mental health and essential oils and the power that can bring us to access parts in the brain. There are synthetic medicines, water-based medicines, are not able to cross into the brain, are not able to have the same direct effect on our limbic system and our amygdala, because your brain is saying, no, 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 I've got to protect myself. I'm not going to let that artificial water-based medicine drug into my brain. But the essential oils, as an organic compound, lipid-based, is able to cross that and access places that are otherwise really difficult to reach. So I'm looking forward to sharing more with you and sharing tools that have really helped me in my life, on my journey, and improve that other aspect of your wellness, no matter where you are in that journey. So have a great day, guys. Looking forward to sharing more with you soon.